Thank you for joining William Steele True Crime, my podcast all across social media. I appreciate you watching my show, Inmate to Roommate on A&E. Tonight, we have a return of a very special guest, Ignacio Esteban, retired agent with ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Can't forget the explosives.
No,
Ignacio is one of the best guests I ever had, and I give him nothing but respect for taking a chance coming on a show of a convicted felon. So I thank you for that, and I thank you for coming back on my show. Now, we did a show the other day, Ignacio, where we discussed this disastrous, catastrophic deal where a basketball player who disgraced herself, her country, who took
yes,
a deal, took a knee, who was smuggling hash oil into Russia, and regardless of what you think of her sentence, they don't play by the same standards we play by. She turned her back on the country that allowed her to marry a woman, allowed her to smoke the hash oil,
that's right.
and ended up in a prison in Russia for 9 years. Was traded for a mass murdering, you know, arms trafficker who wants to kill Americans, Victor Boot. Bot.
Victor Boo, yeah.
Victor Boot. So we talked about that the other day, and now that video is going crazy. Everybody's watching it. There's such an outrage. I haven't found one, and I've read hundreds of replies. Anybody who supports that deal from both sides. I've had people who are Democrats saying, "I've had enough with Biden. Even I've had enough with Biden.
Yeah.
This was the biggest mistake. I don't support this deal. I feel bad for her, but this man should have never been freed." So,
Never,
so we
never.
did that. Check out my interview on this on my true crime channel. And so now she was back down a little bit of follow up on that case and about the disaster that is Joe Biden. And
And also, I wrote a book 4 months earlier about this, but Victor Bout, the worst mass trafficker in world history, right? Victor Bout. So,
yep,
if you don't know much about it, it's a good read because it gives you his background, his KGB Soviet Union background. He's a linguistic expert, and how he got involved in becoming the merchant of death, right? How did he evolve? When the collapse of the Soviet Union, that opened all the doors because he was a linguistic guy who knew the terrain. He was involved in the war in Angola with the Soviets, and then he armed both sides of the conflict. That made him a lot. And then, of course, in Liberia, Sierra Leone, he even get paid in blood diamonds. He was famous and known to when he flew into these countries, he was known never to go into hotels, but stay near his crew, camp out in case he had to leave at a moment's notice. Can't blame the guy for that. Very, very smart. He knew what kind of environment he was dealing with. And not just in Africa, in the Middle East, all over, until he was caught up in an elaborate scheme. We talked about that in the other show in Bangkok with DA agents, unbelievable, posing as FARC members who wanted to use these weapons, mass weapons, you name it, Stinger missiles, AK-47s, machine guns, drones, anything and anything to get their hands on. And they were talking about tens of millions of dollars, right? Wasn't chump change here. To be used, and they said this is going to be used against the American military that's in Colombia, the occupiers that we want out, and against agents and anybody else personnel. He said, I don't care. The enemy of America, the enemy of yours is the enemy of mine, and I'm okay with that. And he didn't care. And then after a 2-hour meeting, he went downstairs in the lobby. He was waiting by Thai authorities with DEA agents, popped him and arrested him, and it took 2 years to extradite him to bring him to the United States, where he was convicted on conspiracy charges for murdering Americans overseas. And he should have 25 years he was sentenced to. He's only served, I think, about not even 15. And the ICC showed. Now, the question becomes, I saw the video yesterday. I think we were talking about it earlier. We saw the exchange between Brittany Griner and him laughing, being hugged by, Russian officials right there, right? He's out. He's free. Merchant of death back. Question is, what does Putin want in return, right? He wanted this guy badly. My guess, what I'm reading, what I study about him, I've studied him a lot, is that he still has contacts, he still has connections, and he still has ability to help them win this war in Ukraine. That's what he needs. And he needs either more people or resource and contacts to help change it. It could be hard for them, but there's something in play there with this guy about that he needs. And there's no reason he would have done all this. So we'll have to. It's a mistake. There's no doubt about it. This was it's not a fair trade. This guy is one of the worst mass traffickers in world history, right? There's been movies about him. I mean, Lord of War. I mean, documentaries, books.
Nicolas Cage,
great. When I haven't seen it, look at it. It's based on him, but there's a great documentary about him. The other news channels have done great shows about him recently also. So I suggest people look at it and really, like I said in the other show, call or write or email your local congressperson, representative, your senator, the president himself, and say, this stunk. This was a mistake. You've endangered us. He's went back out there. It was a bad deal. And the Marine who served our country is still out there. He's been there for 4 years. 4 years on bogus charges on espionage, which everybody knows is absolutely bogus. Right. So a lot, and you talked about that also, about the $80,000 that custom officials seized from him. He reported, and then they turned on him in his hotel room, going to a wedding, and then arrested him and said he had a thumb drive full of documents that was bogus, absolute bogus stuff that they went after him for. This is what they do over there. If I'm an American, I do not go to Russia. Do not go to Russia. And now I hear, the tea leaves, what I'm reading, that Biden now wants to give up another high target for Whelan. And because remember, we have a few Russian spies in our jails, right? We have a few Russian spies. That female that's in here. I mean, now he wants to trade for her. So
you're talking about the one that used to go to the NRA meetings.
Yes. I mean, this is where he gets people he wants out, and we get Americans that are in there for bogus charges. I'm sorry, Putin has become a master chess player, and Putin is playing chess and Biden's playing checkers. There's no doubt. You can put this one there. Biden is a checkers player while Putin is playing chess and running circles around him. And this is what we're seeing. That's why it's Joe Biden, one and done. It has to be. It's just horrible decisions there. I mean, frustrating.
He's the worst president in American history at this stage. And
he's another Jimmy Carter. He's another Jimmy Carter.
Part of it I think, is attributable to mental decline, unfortunately. But at the same time, he's following people like, what they call the squad, the AOC of the world, who have these lofty ideas with no idea of how the world actually works. So he's just unbelievable. I can't believe the outrage that I'm getting from posting these videos up, that people are so outraged about what he did. Democrats are turning on him. Democrat fans of mine saying, I no longer support Joe Biden.
4 months ago, when I'll give again a shout out to Gary Jenkins. He saw this very topical, and he asked me if I was writing a book about him. I said, yeah, I'll start about it. So I wrote the book, and I went on his show, which is another great show also, about it. And the question was posed, do you think Biden will do this? And everybody was saying, I hope not. This is not worth it. This is not a fair trade.
Right.
And he did it. Back then, people 4 months ago said, no way, he shouldn't do it. And he did it. And like I said, it's going to go into history as one of the worst prisoner exchanges ever in U.S. history. Or worse, it doesn't balance. It doesn't balance at all. This was a setup. I mean, there's no reason she should have got 9 years. No reason she should have got 9 years. That is absolute bogus.
To clarify, Victor Bott, merchant of death, is one of the most dangerous people on the planet. And President Biden freed him yesterday.
Yeah. So, and there's a reason why Putin has been pushing for so long. But this is not the first time. Putin has been pushing this since the Obama administration, right? And he was vice president. Ever since this all happened during the Obama administration in 2008, trial, everything else. And he's been pushing hard because he needed this guy out for a reason, right? Not because they're KGB comrades. No. This guy, A, has a lot of money. B, has a lot of access. Remember, this guy had assets in this country that were seized all around the world. Some even think he's close to being a billionaire because the amount of money this guy made. Wow. The amount of money, remember how much blood diamonds he was paid. I mean, this guy was paid a lot of money to provide, and these warlords, they didn't care, right? They paid him whatever it took to win these battles. They went from machetes to AK-47s, right, and changed the landscape and took over control. So they knew they had to pay this guy well. I think his contacts in Africa are crucial, and I think Putin, remember, he wants to expand. Africa's a place where he had that bogus, use bogus a lot now, but he had that so-called contractors out there in Central Africa, right, working. So there's stuff going on. I think that you're going to see him back in play. Hopefully the CIA keeps an eye on him.
Isn't there something going on with lithium or some kind of mines in Congo or other areas of Africa that people want to take control of?
Yeah, the communists want it, the CCP, and the Russians. And I think Bout is that guy to help them have the edge. A, he speaks the languages. The guy speaks like 11 languages, right? That's what his specialty is. He's been out of the game for 15 years. But in Africa, things don't change much, right? In other places. So he'll be able to make his contacts again and go right back into business. So I'm hoping the U.S. government and CIA keeps the tabs on him. But like I said, the guy lives in the shadows, man. He lives in the shadows. He knows how to keep away from technology, and he was very, very smart all those years doing it. So, folks, like I said, call and contact your local representatives, make a big stink about it. And but I hate to say it, it's going to happen again with Paul Whelan, because it's already what I'm hearing is in the works, and we're going to give up another big asset, another spy, somebody who's really a problem for people who've been set up.
Wow.
That's a trend.
Let me ask you this: when Victor Bott was arrested in Thailand, you said it took 2 years to extradite him to the United States. Now, why couldn't they do something like an extraordinary rendition, like they do with certain terrorists, and just bring him back? Take a flight off.
I think it was just what I was reading. It was just the Thai government and extradition. He fought it, man. He had good attorneys. I mean, he was fighting tooth and nail, right? The Russians didn't want this happening, but eventually that was it. He came over. El Chapo also fought it from Mexico for a while until the second escape, right? And then it was like, you know what? Enough is enough. This is ridiculous. So these guys have money. All these guys have money. And when you have money, you buy the best attorneys and you fight the system.
When he was set for extradition, there was so much fear about another escape from El Chapo that they actually moved him suddenly to some holding area much closer to the border. And then after that, he went to the States.
And then he went to your neck of the woods in Brooklyn. And one of the biggest cases in the Eastern District of New York. El Chapo Guzman, and that's where he got the life sentence, and now he's sitting. I saw the pictures there. He's hoping that I was reading the jokes there, hoping that there'll be a trade for him in Mexico with some U.S. celebrity getting arrested in Mexico.
I think Crooks was spreading that around.
Yes, I saw that.
I got that. That's pretty humorous.
Shout out to Bill Crooks on that one.
Shout out to Crooks. Okay, so we're on to the topic of gang members and not gang members, but
cartel members.
Cartel members. So, Sinaloa, you have some really deep insights into the people that stay in the shadows. Yes. Now, who is this most wanted man who took over for El Chapo's territory?
Yeah, the Jalisco area. This is now, and people who don't know, I wrote a book called The Rise of a Narco Empire, CJNG, which is the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. And they're now, some people think they're even bigger than Sinaloa. They're rivals for sure. And something now that Chapo and then you have his sons at Chapitos, they just don't have the same control of this guy. This guy is now the guy. His name is El Mencho Cervantes, right? First name Nemesio. We call him El Mencho. I'll give you a little background on him, but he's now, the bounty for him, the U.S. bounty for his arrest is $10 million. After El Chapo escaped the second time, it's only $5 million. So this is double. That shows what a danger, what a problem this guy is. So just to backtrack a little bit, to give your audience a little background about the book and about who this guy is. And he's a different kind of cat than was Escobar, than was El Chapo. These guys, you knew where they lived, right? I mean, these guys lived in palaces. Right. This guy doesn't do that in Guadalajara. This guy does it differently. And I'll tell you why. He was in the United States back in the 90s. He came here illegally. He became a mid-level to upper-level drug trafficker, dealing a lot of heroin up in the San Francisco area. He got popped, and his brother, his whole family was involved in that. He got popped in a reverse with federal authorities, and he was going to get about 5 years. His brother was going to look at life, and they ended up deporting him after a few years, sends him back. When he goes back to the Jalisco area, he ends up going to law enforcement. This guy ends up doing quite a few years in law enforcement. So he gets to learn the techniques of policing, investigators, and how things work. That's very important because he does it for a while. And then he goes into the dark side. He ends up joining the Millennium Cartel, which was affiliated. It was the enforcement side of the Sinaloa. So he ends up becoming, he probably was a dirty cop anyways, but he ended up becoming a sicario. He becomes professional hitman for the Sinaloas. He brings other guys with him. And this crew of his are famous for killing a lot of people. That's what they do. So how do these guys rise? Just like, and just give you a mention, the same thing as El Chapo. These guys barely finished elementary school with that, maybe a fourth grade, fifth grade education. They can barely read and write. He grew up selling avocados in the streets, absolute poverty. And the Mexican government right now says his assets are close to $50 billion with CJNG. It is truly one of the strongest narco empires right now in Mexico. And these guys aren't just in Mexico. They're in Central America and in South America, dealing with what used to be called the FARC to get the cocaine in, because now everything pretty much go through Mexico now. How
Right.
strong they are.
I see there's a massive, besides this situation, are they the ones bringing in, like you hear about all this fentanyl, huge problem, fentanyl?
Yes, they're doing all that.
Biden, once again, failing to secure the border.
Yes.
Who the hell's making this? Is it being made in Mexico, China? Who's
Yes.
making the fentanyl?
They're getting precursors, and they're making everything. The heroin is grown in Mexico. The marijuana is grown in Mexico. The cocaine is in from Colombia, but it all goes through Mexico. Everything is going through Mexico. They're in Colombia. The Colombian cartels don't exist. The Mexican cartels run in Colombia, and they bring the stuff through Mexico. That's how powerful they become. I've never seen, in the 90s and 2000 like this, what they are today. Extremely powerful because, and I've said it in other shows, I think I've said it in yours, the corruption in the Mexico government is enormous from top to bottom. They run the country. Right. It is a narco state, pretty much, what's going on. And that's all over the region now. That's, to my assessment, that's Mexico, Central America, and South America. What's going on there?
The fentanyl clearly being the most dangerous. Small amounts can kill 100,000 people. And you have amateurs mixing it up to cut other drugs with. Police on the street can touch it and have an overdose, get it on their skin or inhale it or whatever. You're saying the precursors are what, coming from China and it's being made in Mexico?
Yeah, that's what I've been reading in the labs. They have a lot. Mexico has become very sophisticated. I mean, there's a lot of money here now. So this is very much so from with their labs, how they're doing things. They're sophisticated. They're not just in Mexico. They're all over the region. They're very sophisticated, and they have money to bribe officials. They have accounts set up just to bribe law enforcement, military, politicians, and it's not just millions, it's millions, tens of millions of dollars bribe money to prepare. And unfortunately, like I said before, I think your last show, that was out there that the president before Lopez Obrador, which is a socialist, I mean, his policies are very weak that become with these guys. I mean, pretty much he's been soft on cartel leadership because he's afraid what happened with Philip Calderon, where it just blew up because he confronted these guys. He went to war. You can't be soft with these guys. It's like going back in the 20s, you let Al Capone and the outfit take over Chicago, right? You got to bring in people and do something about it. He'd rather let them run the show, and hopefully it goes away, which it won't. It just gets worse. No. And Javier and Peña Nieto allegedly took a $100 million bribe from El Chapo so they wouldn't pick him up. And that came out in the trial that he was also bribed. So if the president of the country is being bribed, what does that say about everybody else, from the generals, attorney general, everybody else? Is bad.
This guy El Mencho, he's indicted somewhere in the United States.
It appears he was indicted out of California, and they obviously want to bring him in on major conspiracy drug charges, which all these guys get hit hard. I mean, they just brought in the former president of Honduras, Hernandez. For using his military to protect the drug loads that are coming out from South America, to weaponize, caught in the wire, saying we're going to weaponize this against the United States so it can fall like a rotten apple from within.
Right. Wow.
And he's being tried. Former president of Honduras. It's just like that. I hate to say, you have Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. Now you have a communist that was elected now in Colombia. That the things are getting worse out there. Brazil has another socialist communist, Silva, that just won the election. Bolivia, same thing. Peru, the same thing. It is just about to really collapse, and we have a major situation going on. Like my eyes are open. I'm saying we've got some problems going on here, and all this impacts us.
Where's the president of Honduras being held? He's in the United States already?
Yes. Yeah, he was extradited. Former president Hernandez. He was extradited, I'll say a few months ago. Wow. I'm not sure where he's being held, but I imagine, like all these big trials, it either goes to the Southern District of New York or Eastern. And my philosophy is, I've set some case out there. Things change a lot, and you can tell me this, since you're from New York. After 9/11, the jury pool seems to be very sympathetic for law enforcement, and they want to take care of any terrorists or narcos, terrorists, or anything like that. Show no mercy, and that's what I've seen.
Yeah, that's why nobody can understand why he let a terrorist out of prison yesterday.
That's he is a terrorist. You can call him that. He is a terrorist. He's a terrorist.
I know.
You can say so. Finish the story with El Mencho. So he then goes into the Millennium Cartel, right? He's part of this organization. He's a former law enforcement, dirty, obviously, because no one goes from being a good cop and then becomes an assassin for the Millennium Cartel. They split within the Millennium. They're having issues, and he forms what they call the Zeta Killers, Mata Zetas, right. Because they're become the Zetas. For those who don't know, are they like to target? They splintered off from the Gulf cartel. They like to target innocent people a lot. Something just to get a body count to terrorize communities. That upsets a lot of these guys who said should be business owned, like the mafia is.
Right.
It has to have a purpose. It has to be business. Some of these groups, they like to terrorize, and they go to a village to kill people because they can and because they want to terrorize and show, look at the body count we have here. So they went to war. They formed what was called CJNG. CJNG then has, and these are guys he brought in, have a major rift in Guadalajara. Last few years, it's been a major war in Guadalajara, and it's in the Jalisco state right there. If you look at it on the west side, it's in Guadalajara. They want to break away and form the new plaza, Plaza Nueva, but he doesn't let it happen. Which was a friend of his, an ally called Cholo, and I have an excerpt here. If you want me to read it, I can read about what happens in cartel wars. If you want me to read that,
Absolutely.
all right. Let me read this.
Keep in mind for my audience, all of Ignacio's books and links to his Amazon and Kindle pages are in the description. And if you like what you're hearing from this insightful guest here, please hit like and subscribe, share this video. Trying to build up subscribers here, and we're trying to get the word out about how things really operate and the danger we are in due to incompetent leadership, in my opinion.
Yeah, incompetent leadership here, and we have major, massive corruption. I hate to say it, not just in Mexico, but we have some of it here in the United States also. That's going on here because that's how things could happen. And it just continues to be. When you have this kind of money, like I said, it's either the carrot or the stick. But a lot of times the carrot works, but if not, the stick comes in, and these guys have some major firepower.
Right.
All right. This is an excerpt from my book here, The Rise of a Narco Empire, CJNG. This is what we've been discussing here. And this is where I'm picking up. I just talked about El Mencho. He's formed CJNG. And the guys he brought in, now they want to become the guy. They want to become the man, right? They want to form La Plaza Nueva. And this is what's happening in the last few years in Guadalajara and the war there for control of that region. Chapter 3, Cartel Wars. In March 2017, El Mencho ordered the assassination of Carlos Enrique Sanchez, a.k.a. El Cholo, a former CJNG member who left the group to join a new established drug cartel named La Plaza Nueva, the New Plaza. El Cholo was targeted for murdering a CJNG financial operator named El Colombiano. The split led to a major drug war between the two factions in the streets of Guadalajara. CJNG co-founder Eric Valencia Salazar, a.k.a. 85, also left to join La Plaza cartel, becoming a high-ranking member. On March 18th, 2001, this is last year, El Cholo was killed and his body was found wrapped in plastic and found on a park bench in Guadalajara with a sign on his corpse that said in Spanish, "The traitor El Cholo." Prior to being killed, Sanchez was seen in the internet video surrounded by six masked gunmen, presumably CJNG members. All this you can find. So if you want to look at these pictures and videos, we can maybe post it. This is his assassination. He's being surrounded by CJNG members in masks, and he was tight with El Mencho. He gets killed. He gets tortured. And then his body, you can see the pictures, is wrapped in plastic wrapping and just left there with a sign in Guadalajara Park. Unbelievable pictures. The stuff you can look at.
I saw that. He was on a park bench or something. On a bench.
Yes.
But not only that, you said that can be found. You said his actual murder can be found too?
Just before, they surround him. You'll see the video, right? It's like something from Al-Qaeda, right? This is how dangerous these guys are. They sometimes they cut heads too. I mean, these guys also cut heads. Don't. If
you have that video, by all means, send it to me, and I'll try to edit it up.
Sure.
Make sure it's appropriate, and I'll put it out.
Yeah, they don't show him killing, but they show him just about. He's being surrounded. And the next thing you know, you find him in the park bench, wrapped up. He was tortured and left. So because he betrayed him, he had to make an example of him. Right. That's how you get respect from these guys, and this is what these guys do. So people have an understanding. This is what you're dealing with here, and this is right here. I'm trying to explain to people. They really, I don't think, understand the threat that these people pose to our country and to the region. Soon after Cholo's assassination, Emilio Alejandro Polido Saladina, a.k.a. El Tiburon, which means the shark, also another co-founder of CJNG, left the gang to join the Plaza. So this is a big move to take over Guadalajara. All his close guys left. Just him against 4, right? He gets rid of Cholo, and the next thing he does, the second in command, he surrenders to Mexican authorities. He then he intimidates them enough, he surrenders to local authorities. On September 4th this year, Salazar Ocho Cinco was apprehended by Mexican forces with 2 associates in a town of Talapa in Jalisco with weapons, drugs, and money. 3 out of the 4 guys that threatened to take over and form St. Jude, he took care of them. Either he assassinated them, he had them arrested, or he scared them enough that they self-surrendered. That's why I'll mention now. So what makes El Mencho also a little different, like I was mentioned before, the other guys, was he doesn't live large. He kind of hides, and he lives in the shadows, just like Victor Bout does. Right. He has security teams, I was reading, that always are moving him around different locations. They live in average homes. You really can't tell. And anything that's unusual, they pick up, they're always moving around because they have this law enforcement background. So this is a very different guy than we've dealt with with El Chapo, and definitely Escobar. Escobar was just a guy who just he had a zoo, he had the palace, he had everything, right? He even had his own jailmate from and
like John Gotti, a lot of flash, a lot of bravado, a lot of prison time.
Exactly. This guy doesn't want that, but you know how it ends for these guys.
Not good.
It's always the same way. Either he'll be like El Chapo next to him in the Supermax, or he'll be like El Cholo wrapped up somewhere and found a park bench.
Now, what you said about them moving around all the time, I was a fugitive more than once, and I somehow instinctively knew that my best night's sleep when I was in that status for several years at a time was my best night's sleep was at like a new hotel or a new place that first night. After that, I never got a good night's sleep, and I wouldn't let anybody know where I was. If I was at a hotel, I would collect everybody's cell phones, and they couldn't make a call, until I was gone. But yes, I lived like that. It's not nearly at those guys' level, but just trying to avoid getting captured.
Yeah, these guys have some serious money, and they have security, and allegedly he knows how much the bounty is. Supposedly he pays his security team double that because he has that kind of money. So you got to make sure everybody's paid well, so they're not going to, cooperate with law enforcement to get you arrested. So he allegedly pays well. Now, supposedly this year,
couldn't any one of those guys? They got 10, 20 million from him already. They see the news closing, round up all their family, take them to Spain, and start their lives over. Go to the feds or the CIA and say, "Look,
you're the USA.
Give you all the intel. Give us new names in Spain."
Yeah, Spain or no, they'll probably come to America. They want to live in the U.S. Yeah, but you know what? That might work. I mean, if he hides enough, obviously, but it's a risky proposition bringing your whole family, right?
Time to bail, man. Time to bail out.
Yeah, no, that's bad news there. So that's part of who these guys are. But there was a rumor that I was reading about that came out a few months ago that he has health issues. This guy, he has kidney diseases and he needs treatment. He had a private hospital bill in Guadalajara.
No boy.
There was a rumor that because of COVID, because still it's pretty rampant in these places, right, that he died. And that had spread like wildfire, right? The president, Lopez Obrador, even addressed the nation to say that the rumor was not true. They did not. They thought that was just something that he put out there just to throw him off the track. But he's done. Now he's also the king of tunnels. While I was reading too, just like El Chapo was, right? El Rápido. They also nicknamed him the quick one, the quick exit. How he's able to get away. This guy is also smart like that. But he even hides more. He doesn't even like to be seen like in living flash because that's how you get these guys' attention. So if you like what I'm saying here, I think you want to read more because I have a lot more details in the book. And then I have my sources. You can read more. And I've done a lot of videos too. So you can look me up in YouTube, talk about this conversation here. The Rise of a Narco Empire, CJNG. It's a good read here. El Mencho, a name to remember. He's the new El Chapo. He is the new El Chapo, and he's now the big dog in Mexico.
We want to get our hands on some of those videos and, just pay attention to what Ignacio's saying. How many years in federal law enforcement were you? Just
26.
6 years. Just retired. The man knows what the hell he's talking about. So
I research. I give you facts and my personal experiences. And, I was firsthand the war on drugs, right? Some of the biggest seizures in the 90s, I was part of on the SET team, the contraband enforcement team. That's what we used to get. That's where the Medellin Cali cartel used to deal with South Florida. They went directly with his shipments, and it was insane. The corruption at the airport and seaport with the longshoremen, with the ramp workers. It was insane. You would have 1,000 pounds of cocaine coming in that was going to be ripped off out the door. That's how fast they want to move their product.
I think there was a big one with American Airlines when all the handlers got arrested. stewardesses or whatever.
Something that was nicknamed something special in the air, right?
Yeah.
That's what we
Let me ask you a question. All the years that you're in law enforcement, and if you want to talk about it, has anybody in that capacity, especially you're in South Florida, I've lived there. I know the type of money that's involved in this as well
Yes.
as you do. Has anybody stepped to you with a bribe? I mean, you're part of the Cuban community. You probably run into people at restaurants and say, "Hey, we know who you are. Take $1 million to let us know what the hell's going on."
Yeah, no, I never had that. I've been fortunate, never had that situation. But you just gotta, it happens. We've had, unfortunately, at the airport, we had one case in the '90s, and I'll tell you about this situation. This is when I was maybe a year on the job, maybe less. Right, I'm in my early 20s. Right, and my supervisor and his supervisor were arrested. I don't know if you know where Tamiami Airport is in Kendall.
Yeah.
It's a small little regional airport. They were going themselves and they were signing off on drug loads coming in, right, on the small airplanes and helping transport that with Hallandale Beach Police Department detectives out there. So there's corruption. There's no doubt about it.
Were you working with ATF the time they did the sting on the Hollywood Police Department when they were the ATF Haida Squad had to, posing as disgruntled traffickers, and they were having these officers. They were already doing a lot of illegal things, but supposedly trafficking, moving dope.
And I remember that. No, I wasn't part of that, but I remember that. I remember reading about it. It's amazing how many people. Well, how about in the military where you had the I want to say it was out of was it Army Ranger guys, 82nd Airborne? They were going to do rips of drug load. I don't know if you remember that case.
No,
in Georgia, in southern Georgia, I think is it Camp Lejeune or Camp Pennington that's out there? They were involved in that. So unfortunately, you get corruption on a lot, and you've seen now. I was reading a report how many gang members, and this is going to be a good segment for my next book about MS-13 and La M, the Mexican Mafia. These are two good books that also came out at the same time with the CJNG. How many gang members, because the military needs bodies, are documented gang members in the military?
Right. I do remember that happening several years ago. They were identifying tons of gang members.
Yes.
Like joining. You have books out about that now, right?
Yeah. It's one's on MS-13, Mara Salvatrucha, 13, right. The savagery and brutality of MS-13. I think we had talked before that you also know personally about how bad. Imagine in prison, you've seen how bad MS-13 is, and also La M, the Mexican Mafia. Mexican Mafia is king in the prison system. I mean, they go to war. So let me give your audience a little background and how all of this fits together, right? The cartels are up here. The gang members and prison gang members are the foot soldiers, right? They're the ones that are doing distribution in our country. They have the violence and they have the control right here. So a lot of these guys are tied into different cartel groups. MS-13. And how did MS-13 start? I'll start with them first because they're tied in very close. The reason why they have a 13, that's important to understand La M, the Mexican Mafia. Well, that means the M in Spanish, and how all that is important. So people don't say they see a 13. Why you need to know that's important? Because if someone has a 13 tattooed on there, or they have some other signs, that's a sign they're involved in a street gang or prison gang, right? And I'm going to explain all that to your audience. So it's a little educational. Plus, I think some interesting stories here too. We're going to talk about it. MS-13 actually started with Salvadorian immigrants, Salvadorian immigrants, not Mexicans, Salvadorian immigrants that were coming in the 80s and 90s from the Salvadorian Civil War.
Right,
so you haven't seen that brutal civil war between the peasants, which is the leftists, against the government, right? Corrupt government, leftists, a brutal, horrible civil war that really was taking a toll, and these people were coming out here. Most, unfortunately, were illegal. They weren't given amnesty until years later, and they were being targeted by other ethnic groups, either Mexicans, blacks, Anglos, what have you, right? So they were there set up for protection. They later will evolve to what they are today with a background in satanic rituals, right? And their brutality. I mean, they are absolutely a brutal, vicious organization that kills and very, very bloodthirsty in what they are. And I'll give you a few examples so your audience can see how bad are these guys. There was a it's like a road rage incident in San Francisco. This is maybe about 10 years ago, where there was a father and his two sons in a car, and an MS-13 member was behind him. I guess he had blocked the left turn lane, and he couldn't turn. The guy flipped out, took out his gun, and executed the father and the two sons in the car because he couldn't make a left turn. That's how brutal some of these guys are. I mean, in Honduras in 2004, the Honduran government, because they were expanding, wanted to bring back the death penalty against gang members, right? So they sent a war, and they said there was an innocent bus of women and children, and they executed the women and children to send an example to the government. If you're going to bring back the death penalty, this is what's going to happen in your country. We're going to turn it into a war zone. Right. So they wouldn't do it. So they don't care. They don't care if you're unarmed. They don't care if you have a baby in your hand. They did. They executed women with their babies because they just don't care. This is the kind of savagery we see with MS-13. Now, how does that tie in, which is another book, with the Mexican Mafia, La M, right? Which is, I bet you've seen them. They have control. When you go in a prison system,
aren't they more prominent like on the West Coast though? I think
West Coast, but they have expanded all over the country.
Okay.
Both MS-13 and the Mexican Mafia.
MS-13 is in New York, South Florida. Yeah,
they're all over. The MS-13 has been not just the U.S. Because of massive deportation. They didn't exist back in the 80s and 90s in El Salvador, Central America. They have really absorbed El Salvador. They have absorbed Honduras. They have absorbed Guatemala. They have absorbed parts of South Mexico, right? And of course, they're here in the U.S. Here in Virginia, they have case after case of MS-13 members attacking. I mean, there's one case here which was shocking a few years ago, where there was this female allegedly was an informant.
Is that Brenda Paz? I think her name is.
I don't remember her name, but I remember the case that they tricked her in pushing the stroller with her baby right to the park.
Yep.
They kill her. The baby starts crying, and they kill the baby also because the baby's making too much noise.
Right.
This is the kind of. This is Virginia, folks. Yeah. This is near the capital,
right? Let me ask you a question: where do the smaller Hispanic gangs stack up against them? Like, for example, Latin Kings. You hear about.
They're rivals. They're actually big rivals. They're actually big rivals. So and that's another problem. That's funny you said that case. In your neck of the woods, up in New York, MS-13 members on bikes had targeted Latin King members on bikes and open shootout with them. So I list all these different kind of cases, all examples, so you have an idea how bad these guys are, MS-13. So if you don't know much about MS-13, I think you'll like the book. I think it gives you an idea where they are, how bad they are, and the problems we have and in Canada. They're big in Canada. All our gangs we have here are in Canada too. But people think Canada is this place that's safe and everything else. That's anything that. I wrote a book about that too. The worst crime syndicates in Canada, right? If you don't know how bad Canada is, you need to read my book so you can see not just the bikers, the Fourth Italian Mafia, the street gangs, firearms trafficking, the Asian gangs. I mean, it is really, really ripe because they're very weak in enforcement there. They have a socialist in there. Right. And they have all these gun laws while the criminals are empowered. Just like in Mexico, strict gun laws, extremely empowered. Strict gun laws, and the average person suffers and is victimized over there. Toronto has become a war zone. It's like Detroit. So Toronto, you see these places, you see Montreal, it's Vancouver. You can see the numbers and the stats, how many shootings you're seeing in these areas. And these guns come from where? From the United States.
I think there should be compulsory in this country, machine gun ownership from the time you're 16 years old. I mean, everybody should own one. Yeah, and here's why. I don't own a gun. I can't. I'm a convicted felon. Let me get that out of the way. I don't even know if this is true. You're a federal law enforcement performer. You know the laws of this country, probably some of the other laws. My understanding is the crime is so low in Switzerland because everybody's armed. Who's going to rob a house or victimize a citizen?
What's the saying?
Is it Israel too?
An armed society is a polite society. Yeah. Don't ever forget that. Armed society is a polite society. Yeah, everybody's armed. How about everybody has open carry, right? Everybody carries a firearm, like in Arizona and other states. It's open carry state. It's not. You don't have to be concealed like in Virginia or Florida. You have to hide it, right? Open carry. You know what you're looking for. Oh shit! I gotta be careful here. You walk around. It's not the Wild West, but you need to be smart out there.
I'm pretty sure it's open carry in Indiana too, because that con artist guy I told you about, who's a suspected serial killer, Charles Ray Smith, this guy, I was with him in front of his house. I mean, the guy's house is just loaded with guns, and I had to I was on supervision. I had to let everybody know. I said, look, this guy's wanted me to live over there, but he's got guns and machine guns all over that. He has Barretts all against the wall. And so I told him, look, I can't stay at your house helping you out, do anything with you. You're under federal investigation. You got guns everywhere. I'm not allowed to be, in possession of a gun. So 4th of July, we're in front of his house. He's got a mansion on the river, and he's got all these exotic cars. He's got a guy over there who's a known drug dealer who was bringing him a bunch of gold right in front of me. And the local, he's out there on 4th of July at about 12 noon, and he's got 2 gold-plated guns, 45s, under both shoulders. I think he had a gun in his hand intermittently. Traffic passing by in front of his house, and he's just armed to the teeth right in front of it on the sidewalk in front of his house in a really nice area of town. Police officer passed by, and there's rumors and speculation that he had several police on the payroll over the years. And the guy slowed down. The officer slowed down to look at him. He goes, "What the F you looking at?"
Oh man.
I cursed the officer out. I'm like, dude,
They're crazy.
I'm on parole. You're standing here with these guns. Where I come from, you're going to jail for 4 years, and I shouldn't be, near you.
That's
But,
right.
he's cursing out a police officer.
That's
So
smart.
I just got away from this dude. He was so unstable. His guns were legal for him to have, but he had them out in public all the time. He'd go to the store. He's wearing one on his.
That's in Indiana.
Yeah, he was open carry everywhere. I think it's
A lot of
open
states
carry.
they do have open carry. Yeah, I like concealed carry. Because I don't want people to know what I'm carrying. You know what I'm saying? Surprise. Let them think better they're surprised. I'm trained, but quick access to it. If you're gonna have concealed, don't put it in a place you're gonna struggle to get it. Make sure it's concealed in your hip or somewhere. An ankle is hard to get. Some people have it in the ankle. You got to bend down and hide it. And by the time that happens, it could be lights out already, right? You got to have it somewhere on your hip, somewhere on your waist. You can get quick access to it.
The smaller your back, between when I used to carry years ago, 80s, between my spine and the side, I would have one there.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would just keep one in my pocket. But
yeah, you have to be quick access. This is, of course, we're talking about getting concealed weapons, doing things right the legal way. Nothing illegal. This is people defending themselves, protecting themselves against mass shooters, home invaders, any carjackers, anything like that. You want to have access to it.
I believe any teacher that wants to be armed and has the appropriate training should be, because who's going to defend these kids when the police are trying to figure out what to do and gear up and and who's the commander? They're not going in to save kids when maybe a teacher's already in there and takes the guy out and it's over with. So
yeah, that's what happened at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas. Very sad. If you haven't seen that video, and I wrote a very good detailed book about solutions about that, the worst mass shootings in U.S. history and how to stop them happening again. You can really get, and that's a very detailed read. And I talk about probably the last 40 years, some of the worst mass shootings, the good, the bad, and the ugly, what we've learned and what we haven't learned, and with the mistakes we still need to change and what we have to change. So those are good conversations. Going back to La M, the Mexican Mafia, and keeping it. So what is the 13, and how does Mara Salvatrucha, right? Why do they go 13? Because a lot of these guys will get arrested, and maybe you can attest to this too, Bill, what I'm about to say here. So in the prisons, especially in California, the Mexican Mafia really started again, just like MS-13 started in the U.S. Mexican Mafia in the 50s started in San Quentin, near San Francisco, California. And was to fight off the black groups, and also to fight off the Aryan Brotherhood and other Aryan groups that were in there. So it's pretty much self-preservation, but it expands, right, in the 60s and 70s, because then they get their foot soldiers, especially in Southern California, the Sureños, which is Southern gang members, right? They are striving to become made gangsters in La M, in the Mexican Mafia, right? So they have to do the work on the outside so they can get paid Mexican Mafia in the inside. In extortion schemes, you're dealing with drug trafficking schemes, kidnappings, murders, hits, whatever. They make the calls, and they do it. I have a pretty good book, not just on this one, but it's called Prison Gang Killers, which I wrote, which breaks down all the different gangs in the prisons, and a pretty cool short video. A shout out to Thomas Berryman. I know you did the show. I've done the show. Yeah. He did a really cool short on this where I'm narrating it, and he's matching up. So if you want to take a look at that, Prison Gang Killers, cool short. It's done really good also videos You can see how it looks there. So they end up having a lot of these street gangs these guys want to become Mexican mafia guys, right? So by adding the 13, right, M in our alphabet is a 13th letter, right? They're paying respect, homage. They work for them, right? So you see Sureño Sur 13. You'll see MS 13. You'll see all these Hispanic groups. When they have the 13, guess what? They're tied in with them, with Mexican Mafia. Now, the biggest rival in the prison system with the Mexican Mafia is La Nuestra Familia, right? The Norteños. They don't like each other, right? You have the Southerners, Sureños, Southerners, Norteños, Northerners, and they go to war. These guys in California system are at war. Now, because the Mexican Mafia becomes so big and they've tied in with the cartels, they become very powerful because of their network. The cartels are using these gangs. They become sophisticated and they spread out. Texas Syndicate, I think you were in Texas?
No, not me. I was not
in Texas. Texas Syndicate, it's enormous. Another Hispanic group, right, that has ties in there. They're at war with the Mexican Mafia also. So they got big groups going on there. You have the Latin Kings. And of course, they're also at war with the Black Guerrilla family, the Bloods and Crips. They're in battles in there. In fact, the Mexican Mafia is notorious for giving it people because they don't like them, calling ethnic cleansing to target Black gang members in their areas. So if you see any Black gang member, they put hits on those guys to take care of them. So it is a really nasty situation between the Hispanic groups and the Black groups that are going on there to take care of that there. So, that's the group there. So a little side story here. Doc Cavazos, he would become the president of the Mongol biker group, right? When we saw the brawl between the Hells Angels, you haven't seen that, folks, take a look at that great video Bill has out there showing the brawl between Hells Angels and the Mongols, right? Great, it has tons of views.
Right, it's on my True Crime channel here, right here on True Crime official William Steele. You'll see that video.
Oh, it's a great show. If you haven't seen it, you have to see it. Take a look at it, and you'll see some of the books we have out there also. So Doc Cavazos, Ruben Doc Cavazos was a Sureño. Right, I'll tell you a quick story. This is a really good, fascinating story here. He was Sureño. He grew up in a little different than Sonny Barger or Taco Bowman. I'll do a show later with you if you want on one percenters. But I want to tell you this story because he would go to war with La M, Mexican Mafia, because he was a Sureño. He gets recruited by the Mongols, but he doesn't like what he sees. And I wrote a book about this, The Mongol Nation, The Fall of Doc Cavazos. So if you like that, take a look at that. So he gets recruited, and he doesn't like, he sees these guys as being soft old guys who really don't command respect, right? When he comes in, he's charismatic. He moves up, becomes president, but he wants to bring in the guys because he grew up as a Sureño, a street gang in Southern California, right? He wants to bring these guys in, but these guys don't even know how to ride a bike, Bill. They don't even own a Harley. They don't even understand the culture. He doesn't care. He starts bringing all these guys in. Well, La M, Mexican Mafia, is not happy with this because those are their foot soldiers. He said, well, you're going to owe us a tax because you know how it works. You're going to have to pay us now. He tells them to go pound sand. Well, do you think you want to go to war with the Mexican Mafia, the Mongols do? No. That doesn't end up well for those guys. Right. They get torn up. And in fact, it gets so bad, he gets so careless. In Operation Black Rain, ATF 3-year investigation, ATF agents, not only one, not two, not three, 4 agents get fully patched, made in the Mongols, right?
My God.
Plus, these guys need girlfriends, so they bring in female ATF agents to act as their girlfriends. So another 4, 8 are inside the organization. So if you haven't known about Operation Black Rain,
was that one of the ones with Jay Dobbins? He wrote a book as well, the ATF agent.
No, that's a different one. That was the Hells Angels.
Okay.
That was Operation Black Biscuit.
Now, I know in the old school mob in New York, if a member, represented for somebody to be made man, and he was an informant or especially an agent, they'd be killed also just for bringing him into the fold. Is that the same way with the bikers?
Donnie Brasco's like that, right?
Right. Is that the same way with the bikers? Are the people that patch them in responsible, or there's no accountability?
I don't think there's accountability because a lot of the guys, the case end up, he gets booted out of the club because they think that he's reckless and he's stealing. And a few months later, in October 2008, he's arrested, and over 60-some people are also arrested. They were indicted, seizures throughout the country. It was a big thing. It almost brought them to their knees. So, and I didn't bring this up because he was Sureño that went to war with Laeme. So Laeme is around. If you like this, you definitely like my biker books. You know, definitely like the videos. Check out the One Percenter books, and we can talk more about the Hell's Angels, Taco Bowman, the Mongol Nation. You don't know what a percenter. They also have. This is the guys who are non-law abiding citizens, right?
Correct.
Guys who organize crime. They take pride. They have a patch that's 1 percenter that says that. So that makes them very distinct. And you see their colors, what they wear. You know, you can't miss it either. So if you don't know much about that,
how do these guys feel about getting photographed in public? Like if somebody was to whip out their iPhone, hey, some bikers over there. You know, are they? What the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I think if you're doing their face, they'll probably take the phone from you and break it.
Right, yeah, because I mean they're advertising what they're doing, and then you know, so some women are unfortunately enamored by that. And they might want to take pictures, or some tourist or somebody, but they don't realize that they don't want to be photographed.
I mean, Sonny Barger wrote his autobiography about it, right?
Yeah.
Sonny Barger wrote a lot of stuff. He just passed away in the summer. Same with Mambushur from Canada, who's Hell's Angel. So I put a lot of this cool stuff in here about these guys. But Laeme, MS-13, absolutely brutal, absolutely ruthless, vicious. I mean, you were in the prison system. You know how much control these guys have of the Hispanic gangs.
Right.
Even though they may be feuding on the street, once you're in the prison system, it's under them. And they're the ones who make the decisions who lives or dies. If you cross them, they'll vote on it and they'll execute you.
I'll tell you what, even in the prison system, in several states where I was, it's the same thing. A lot of times they have many staff members corrupted to bring in dope. They're making a lot of money bringing in dope and various forms and cell phones. And so you would have a situation where, for example, I was a law clerk and I enjoy helping people, black, white, whatever. So in Virginia, I was at a Supermax because I was high escape risk. So the officers there were extremely racist against the blacks. Now I heard all these rumors, but I'm thinking like, okay, everybody's playing the race card. They're trying to, make this stuff up. But then I witnessed it with my own eyes what goes on in the western part of that state, and I couldn't believe it, man. They were beating these guys up. If there was a fight, 2 or 3 gang members jumping on somebody else in the Supermax, they hit a horn. You got to lay face down. Well, they did that once. I was there about a week. I'm trying to get out of there. I was a nonviolent offender. They overscored me. I had too many security points. I had 17. They scored me at 34, eligible for Supermax with no override. So I was a law clerk, and I analyzed it as soon as I got there. I knew where I was supposed to be at level 2. They shot me to a Supermax instead. I was at not Red Onion, the other one, Wallens Ridge. So it was horrible, man. These guys would fight, and then that horn goes off. I was telling everybody, get me out of here. I don't belong in this facility,
No, that's not a good place to be, man.
Escape risk. Well, it's all gang members, gang leadership, people that are giving trouble in other states. They had them shipped there. So I was considered escape risk. I was considered, a thorn in their side because I was always writing grievances and filing, helping people file lawsuits. So they didn't like me from that perspective. But at the same time, I tried to be cordial with staff and decent. Yes, sir. No, sir. But the gang members, if you would help certain people, like who was a nobody, get medical care, or an officer tore up his legal work, just being nasty to the guy, and you help that guy write up that officer, they would take you, and they did it to me. And I had these officers, they got a mouthful of dip and it's heavy Western Virginia accent, say, "Boy, you an end lover, boy," and I'm like, I'm used to keeping my hands in my pocket or behind my back when I'm talking to them, so they see I pose no threat. And I'd be like, "No, sir." I said, I talk to everybody equally, and unless they give me otherwise, then I don't deal with them no more. And their attitude was like, "Look, you're helping those ends write grievances against us and this and that. You know where you're at, boy? You're in Wallens Ridge, and we can have you killed. I can give one of these gang members a cigarette and have you beat half to death in here, and then we'll shoot you from the tower and act like you're the problem and make sure we aim for your face and eyes, and you're either going to be killed because they're shooting rubber pellets." So I got this lecture my first week there asking me, and then I saw them. They had a guy on his knees because he was late for rec. And he said, "Sir, please, I just missed the door by a second." He was being emphatic but polite about it, because we never get out of the cells. And they put him back in his cell, but then they came to get him. When everybody went to rec, I stayed back, came to get him, told him to step out, go to his knees. They put the leg shackles. They put it behind his back. And they would say, look, you like yelling at us to tell us what to let you out to Rick. You missed the door. You missed the door. You're not supposed to be arguing with us. And he goes, I didn't mean it. I'm in my cell now. I'm fine. There's no problem. And so one tells them to stand up, and they had a camera on this the whole time. One of them was carrying a camera to do the cell extraction. They didn't need to do a cell extraction. They had the camera, and there's cameras everywhere in the unit. They had the leg irons on them. One guy tells him to stand up, and as he's standing up, the other officer behind him grabbed those leg irons from behind and made his face slam into the floor. It was covered in blood, broke his nose, teeth on the floor. I witnessed this from 5-6 cells over on a corner like this. I was here, it was over there, so I had perfect visibility. And I couldn't believe it, and I'm very much an advocate for prisoner rights and all that. But I'm also very respectful to staff. I've always been. And I work with the administration to try to help offenders navigate like classes and resolve
issues. Tough place. That's a tough place, man. And then on top of that, you add the Mexican mafia or other groups in there. They just go after each other. They eat each other up.
I saw this transpire, and this guy eventually got out of the hole or medical, wherever they had them. I said, look, I witnessed what happened to you. I said, I'll be glad to be a witness. You want to get your lawyer out here, get those videos. They told me that both cameras were down that day, he said. And they stuck me in medical for a month until I healed up. They blocked all access to his outside world, his phone calls, until he healed up. And they warned him that if he reports it or tries to file charges or grievances against them, that he'd be killed. He'd never leave Wallens Ridge. So I personally witnessed the attacks on blacks by officers in that prison. And I never believed it was a thing. I just thought it was something that, happened 20, 30 years ago. It's still a thing.
Some of these prisons, man, it's just atrocious. You probably remember, if you haven't seen this documentary, I think it was from 1980, 81 in New Mexico, some of these prison riots.
Oh, my God.
That was horrific. They took over. They take over the prisons.
They took over in the protective custody units with blowtorches.
Yes.
Killed everybody in their cells. Burned them alive.
And if they're bleeding out, they use the blowtorches so they're still alive, so they can torture some more. Oh, I mean, you haven't seen that? Go look at the documentary, folks. And look at that, what happened in 1980 in New Mexico. Some of the horrific prison. We've had some really bad prison riots in this country, really bad. So,
and with those good thoughts on our mind, all this story about crime and a corrupt president and the crazy things he's doing to free mass murderers and arms traffickers in exchange for a basketball player, I want to wish everybody a very happy holidays. Please buy Ignacio's books. Get the free ones, all you can. He's got a great autobiography as well. The links are in the description. Hit like and subscribe. Please buy my books as well. I have 2 books out that I poured my heart out into. They're written to help victims and others understand the mind of Robert Durst and Ghislaine Maxwell. So I'd ask you guys to support our work and my channels.
I appreciate it.
Very, very grateful, Ignacio, to have you back. If there's anything else you want to bring up, shout out.
Shout out to all you guys. I appreciate it. I do all the work out here, and got a lot of stuff out there. You can find me on Amazon. Like you said, you got the links there. You put in my name, you'll see all the books I have, 56 books and counting. All the good stuff. If you enjoy it, you can follow me on Facebook. You can follow me on LinkedIn, YouTube. I mean, we've done a few other shows before. If you like this one, please look at our shows in the past. I think you'll love our conversations. And I've done over 50 shows and counting. You can find a lot more of this conversations that I've done with other shows out there. So please check it out.
And as you see my shows, guys, fans of mine from Inmate to Roommate, or my books, or fans of mine from these channels, do me a favor. Please take my videos and share them across other groups, true crime groups, other podcast groups, movie groups, law enforcement groups. Share them around, because I want to build my numbers up, turn this into something where I'm making an honest living, trying to help people. My videos are not about glorifying my past. They're about trying to help people by telling stories and having great guests on like Ignacio.
Thank you, man.
We wish you all the best, man. Thank you so much for coming on again.
Thank you, man. Happy holidays and happy New Year's, everybody.
You too.
Thank you, man.